Canada is seeing the worst joblessness since 1998, and they want you to think, oh, everything is fine. So let's get right into this and see what first they're talking about when it comes to the mainstream media and how they're framing this narrative. So Canada's economy back down to earth. I mean, where was it before? Just insane. 41,000 jobs gone in July. Unemployment rate steady at 6.9%. So first of all, I just want to show you what that looks like on a chart. Over the past 3 years, we've seen unemployment going up and up and up, despite the narrative of tariffs and all the bullshit that you're hearing. Look at the unemployment rate for the past 3 years. It's been steadily rising. Now, another 40,000 jobs have been lost here as well. I don't even believe this data, and I'll tell you why. It's just a survey. If people understood how this data was gathered, like, they would be like, why? Why is it done this way? Why isn't it payroll data? Why are they calling people and emailing people? And it's just a small sample of people that they use, around 59,000 households. So it's really not a massive survey that they're doing. So let's get into it. Canada's labour market lost a net 40,800 jobs in July, and the unemployment rate held steady at 6.9%. The jobs lost were largely full-time positions. The agency says net job losses were highest among people aged 15 to 24. These people are just getting absolutely screwed here. And I'm going to change that backdrop real quick because it looks quite distracting for people. I'm not sure that people will really like that. That's better. So overall, there has been little net employment growth since the beginning of the year, and the number of employed people in July was little changed compared with January. So plus 27,000, and that's the entire year. That's the entire year. 27,000 jobs. Absolutely crazy. So the experts were expecting 15,000 jobs. They did not get that at all. And as Ben put on X here, unemployment rate in Toronto up to 9.2% in July, highest since 2010 outside of the pandemic. But there's even more shocking stats when it comes to long-term joblessness, which is at the highest since 1998. And that's from the government. And like I said, these statistics, they show a trend, but are they honestly something we can look to and say they are really accurate? Absolutely not. Like pretty much everything that comes from the government. So employment was down across several industries, led by information, culture, and recreation, minus 29,000 jobs. 3.3% of the jobs lost in a single month. I mean, that's absolutely insane. Construction lost 1.3% of the total employment in a month. Unemployment declined in Alberta. It actually went up 1%, their unemployment rate. We'll get onto that in a minute. And British Columbia minus 16,000 jobs as well. So pretty interesting. But, you know, this is the craziest stat that I read in this entire report, which is unemployed people continue to face difficulties finding work in July. We know about that. We've been fucking covering this for so long on this channel. Of the 1.6 million people who were unemployed in July, 23.8% were in long-term unemployment, meaning they had been continually searching for work for 27 weeks or more. This was the highest share of long-term unemployment since February 1998, if you exclude the pandemic. So again, we're going back to like the global financial crisis, and we're going back to the 1990s again in terms of unemployment. So it's absolutely crazy what's going on. The Canadian dollar pretty much doing nothing on this, and this is a daily chart that you're looking at right here. And since obviously the tariffs and all that stuff went off, it's actually been on a decent rally here, and it doesn't look like it's crashing off this news or declining. It looks like it's having a decent pull forward at the moment, which is pretty interesting. So if you look at the breakdown by industry here, you can see construction, one of the biggest losers here. Now, why is this so important? Because we've been talking about how bad and how shit the condo market is. And the potential for layoffs there is absolutely massive. Could this be what we're beginning to see with 1.3% of that workforce vanishing in a single month and being laid off? So maybe. And then you've got healthcare down, agriculture down at this time of year again, a little bit strange. And then the only gaining stuff was transportation and warehousing, educational services, other services, accommodation and food services. Manufacturing, surprisingly, actually pretty much flat, but gaining slightly this month. So this wasn't pulled down by manufacturing. So it wasn't all to do with the tariffs. And I'm sure that's how this narrative is going to be spun for this by the mainstream media. And then if you look at what's happening across the provinces here, you can see unemployment rate in BC is up to 5.9%. But look at this. Alberta, the unemployment rate has gone up 1% to 7.8%, hot on the heels of, obviously, Ontario, that is at 7.9% here. And you've got Quebec, 5.5%, actually down slightly. The rest of the province is kind of flat for the most part. So very interesting what's happening there. And now I want to show you this because, again, this is just kind of funny because you look at the numbers in this report and you see the only industry or class of workers, should I say, that's gaining as usual is the public sector. So you look at the public sector, they gained around 4,000 jobs. Private sector lost around 39,000 jobs. Self-employed, 5.8 thousand jobs. So again, it was a net negative report here, but I don't know. How much can you really trust these numbers? That's what I want to ask people out there. Because when you look into the data and how it's being gathered, it's not really accurate when you're just emailing people, calling people on the phone. They could say anything. You could actually get payroll data from places like ADP and put a report together that would paint a better picture. But of course, why do you think that the government wants to maintain control over this? I mean, it's so obvious. It's the same reason why the CPI is never going to be produced by a third party. It's always going to be the government because they're always going to produce misleading numbers because they want to mislead you. Because inflation is in fact just a tax and it's the most persistent one. And people have got a choice between actual taxation or inflation, because that's really the way it's going, because the government is not reducing their spending at all. They're absolutely out of control. And then there's also a narrative around the Bank of Canada now cutting based off this data. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. In fact, we'll look at the bonds in a second here and see how they're reacting. Haven't looked at that actually. Core inflation is at 2.7%, and it's clearly accelerated so far over the past year. So obviously the Bank of Canada loves looking at core inflation. So it's kind of doubtful that they're going to be cutting rates, especially if the next report that comes out between now and the meeting is obviously coming in high around this 2.5, 2.7 mark. And then you've got just normal inflation, or the CPI, at 1.9%. So nearly at their 2% target. I don't know why they have this target. Ever since they started targeting that inflation, you've just seen the reports get more and more doctored, more and more modified. I wonder why that has obviously happened. So let's take a look here and see what's going on with the 5-year government bond. Actually down 1%. Let's take a look at the 1 year and see if that is actually doing much today. That's down as well, but still in April, it was way further down. So is the Bank of Canada going to cut? I mean, Probably not, according to at least the bond market. And that's what I would really listen to. I wouldn't listen and put much weight into all these narratives that are spun around by the mainstream media about whether they're going to cut, whether they're not going to cut. It makes no fucking difference anyway. I know everybody looks at this because so many people are debt slaves in Canada, but it really makes no difference because they don't control things like the bond market anyway. They just control this overnight rate. And when you're in a deleveraging cycle, I mean, interest rates going down, do they really make a difference? Because people aren't taking on massive amounts of debt. It's not like during the mania and the run-up when people are putting on loads and loads of debt, so they need these interest rates to come down. A lot of debt is being destroyed, actually, the complete opposite. And because of that, that means banks don't want to lend as much, which means that credit actually starts to freeze up. And I've got a video coming on that next week because I got so much data to show you, which is about the banks and how lending is stopping. And 4 out of 5 of the big banks in Canada, lending is frozen. They don't want to really lend anymore, and the evidence is in the data, and we'll be going over that next week, so stay tuned to the channel. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for being on this live stream, and I will see you in the next one. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.